Hey, this is Heidi Lynch.
And I'm Perrie Voss. And this is Avocado Toast, the series podcast.
Our web series was inspired by our real-life experiences.
The great ones.
And the heartbreaking ones. And our podcast series is inspired by the community around us. The people we collaborate with. The people who lift us up. The people who listen when things aren't going so well and celebrate when things are.
And in our podcast, we wanted to reach out and chat with other artists and creators to find out what makes them tick. What inspires them?
What drives them?
What brings them joy?
We hope that they inspire you as much as they inspired us.
Enjoy. Today, Perrie Voss chats with Jay Stevens, cinematographer and director.
Hi, Jay Stevens.
Hi, Perrie Voss.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. This is the Jay Stevens, cinematographer, director, extraordinaire, show creator, filmmaker, all things incredible. And we were lucky enough to beg for them to come on and save the day as our assistant camera when we were in a bit of a bind halfway through shooting. And we were really lucky to have you. So thank you for chatting with me today.
Of course, and it was awesome to be a part of. As you alluded to there, I don't assistant camera very much anymore, but Sam Coyle, the director of Avocado Toast, is one of my best friends and also directed my first feature as a cinematographer. And so I got a very hurried panic text one night being like, anyway, you're free for the next 10 days and can help us out because we had someone who can't finish the rest of the show. And I was like, for you, Sammy, I got you. And then it was really lovely, and it was such a talented group of people, and I think a very important story to be out there in the world. So yeah, it's not something I do often, but I was happy to jump on board because I think it's an important story that deserves to be seen.
We were very lucky to have you.
And it was really fun. I hadn't met Cam, the cinematographer, beforehand at all, so it was really fun to get to know him, and a wonderful human and super talented. Learned a few things from him too, so yeah, it was a good experience.
Yeah, Cam's awesome, so having the two of you is just like a total dream. So yeah,
it was fun.
So Jay is also a incredible filmmaker, as I said, and has a series out called Slo Pitch, which is also airing on Out TV as well as Kinda TV.
Yeah, it's on Out TV in Canada, and then Kinda TV, which is a YouTube channel pretty much worldwide. But it's, if you don't already have it, get an Out TV subscription. You can see both of the shows, which is fun and cool.
Well, 2-for-1 queer content, female non-binary driven stories, and very, very cool. It's an awesome show. So yeah. So you did that. You shot that around this time last year, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Beginning of October last year is when we shot it. Yeah.
And so what else have you been working on in the COVID times? How have you been coping?
Pretty good. Yeah. Earlier we were talking about the COVID wall, and I like to say that there's been many different COVID walls of differing sizes, because I feel like some days it's like not so bad, and some days it's like, oh my God, I just want to go hug everyone I know, but I can't, and that sucks. But no, I spent the first 3 months with everyone else, just not doing anything at all, and at first was like, ooh, fun, I can do whatever I want, and then I was like, okay, this is now dragged on for much longer than we thought it was going to.
Right.
But it was a good time to just, I used it to kind of think about what I wanted to do. Because it can be very easy when you're just jumping from project to project, to not really think about what you want to do and just be like, okay, I've been offered this, I'm going to jump on it. But having the time to be like, no, what is the impact I want to make? What are the roles that I want to do? I thought was very, very helpful in figuring out, what I want to do and what I definitely don't want to do can be equally as helpful.
Did you did you find anything that you're like, hey, I didn't actually realize that I really wanted to pursue that? Or is there a part of your career that you're now sort of re-emboldened to explore and discover?
I don't know if there was I've never thought about this before, but I think that I always saw myself as a director, and that was my end goal. I never really saw myself in the camera department, to be honest. And then I went to school, and right out of school got a job as a PA, and then the camera assistant dropped out the night before the shoot. Mm-hmm. And so one of the producers was like, you know how to work with cameras, right? And I was like, yeah, I had to do it at school, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, sweet, tomorrow you're getting upgraded to second AC. And I was like, okay, great. And then from that, just kept with the same production company, kept getting offered camera assistant or camera operator roles. And I was like, oh, this is actually really fun and my brain works this way. So started doing more stuff with that. And then I'm from Calgary, so that was all in Calgary. And then when I moved to Toronto, just like the thing that hit for me was people hiring me as a cinematographer. And so, yeah, I kept doing that. And because there were great projects that I was working on, it's never been like, oh, I hate that I'm doing this. It just, I think the like push to keep developing stuff that I want to direct kind of fell away a little bit, just because it was working and I was getting hired as a cinematographer. So I think it just made me realize like, oh, I want to direct a feature film. Like I directed Slo Pitch last year, and hopefully there'll be a season 2 and stuff like that. But I was like, what other than that do I want to direct, and making the steps forward to do more of that, because that's ultimately what I do love to do. So
I think it's really cool that you're able to shoot and direct, because I mean, I know that like cinematographers and directors have to create a shorthand together, and it's like you can just do that in your brain. So you're like,
well, listen, for Slo Pitch, it was the best thing ever because it's a mockumentary. So yeah, it was really easy, rather than as a director having to go to the op and be like, okay, on this next one, when this person says this line, zoom in just a little bit, and then when they say this next line, like crash zoom in. I think like obviously with shows like The Office and Parks and Rec, it's done, people do it and it works well. And but as a director, it was just so fun because I feel like that is my instinct to just like get in there, and it's really adding to the comedy, I think, in terms of like when you zoom in on something or like pan to someone else or whatever. So yeah, it was really fun to do both, and that's where I think that worked really, really well hand in hand.
That's really cool. I mean, working with you, like where we have, I feel like I've seen you work with directors really well, and I've also seen you like take control and just like shoot and direct, which I think is really cool. Like I think it's an amazing skill that you're not just like, I need to do everything. Like you're not a control freak about it. You
I hope it doesn't come across
not
that
at
way.
all. No,
Yeah.
not at all. It's cool. It's nice to see that you can transition like that. I think there's a directness, but like there's like a humility that comes with that. So I think it's really, yeah, I'm inspired whenever I work with you. So it's very cool.
Thank you. I think my biggest thing as a director is that I feel very passionately that when you're directing something, it should be a story that you should tell. If that makes any sense. Like there's just certain stories where I'm like, I think the story should get made. I think people need to see it, but I'm not the right person to tell this. And so what I love about cinematography is that when it is one of those stories that I don't feel like my voice is the most important one, I can just help support other filmmakers that I absolutely love. And then, yeah, don't feel like I have to be like, oh, you should be directing like this. It's just fun to see them flourish and like see these other stories that are important but aren't mine to tell come to life and support how I can.
That's really cool. And I think that is really important to be able to take that step back, like, and let that sort of come to, it actually leads me to my next question, which is
segues.
I know, you just nailed that segue for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you think that it is the filmmaker's responsibility to sort of like cater to an audience? Or do you like to sort of release things to the world that would be received however it might be received, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no. I think I'm bad for this one because I think that I like to make stuff that I would like to see as an audience member.
Okay.
And so I'm not necessarily thinking of the other audience members, which maybe I should more. But I'm never like, what are audiences craving these days? I more so go about it and think like, what do I want to see? What's the stories that I think should be being told? And then I think growing up, I do think I was one of those like audiences that queer films were targeted towards. And so watching all these horrible and some not so bad and some really good queer stories being told, and then talking about it with different friends and stuff within the community, I could kind of tell when my opinions lined up with other people who are queer and when they diverged. And I believe I'm a pretty good litmus test for if I think it is good queer content, others might. So that sounds really egotistical, but like hopefully if I think that it's a story that should be told, there are others. I'm not saying the whole community, I'm not saying that, but like hopefully there's then more audience members for that out there. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I think you sort of talked about that with me with Slo Pitch, that you're like, I know what they want. This is exactly what I would want to watch. There's an audience for this. I think the cool thing about Slo Pitch is that like it transcends, my mom watched it, and she was so excited about that, which was cool, I think, for both of us.
I just think that like humans are humans and experiences are universal. And so when you're making content that's not necessarily about being queer, where you just have queer characters experiencing other things, I think there's like nuggets that anyone can get from that, because so much is universal. But I think Avocado Toast had the same thing, where like in just your content you cover more than just like a bisexual coming out story, but I think the reach as well is like it's someone who's going through heartbreak, it's someone whose family is now like shifting somewhere other than what they thought it was. And I think those are things that like regardless of your sexual orientation, audiences can connect with. And I think that's what your show did so well, because there are universal themes throughout there, and then like and a few queer characters also.
Yeah, always. I mean,
always
characters for everybody.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. Were there any characters that you learned anything from in Avocado Toast, or were there like favorite characters that you're like, like that's something that means something to me for XYZ?
Yeah, well, first of all, I do think it's awesome that you had some positive bisexual representation in there, because it's often something that's overlooked, or not overlooked, but full out judged by the queer community. And I know that like I don't identify as a lesbian anymore. I identify as queer just because my own gender identity, but I know that there are a lot of lesbians out there who think that people are bi until they decide, basically, which is garbage. So I think having a show that shows someone who's bisexual and kind of coming to terms with that and showing different people's reaction to that is awesome. But in terms of like I don't think I learned as personally. I can see how other people would. I don't think I necessarily like learned about that. But I do think I'm fortunate. I don't know if that's even the right word. My parents are still together, and so seeing someone dealing with a parent's divorce is very interesting for me, because like seeing someone dealing with that, and I think the story is often like a 5-year-old's parents get divorced, and then it obviously like sucks, and they're trying to deal with that because their parents are still their entire world. But in terms of like an older person whose parents get divorced, I hadn't seen that, so kind of I was like, oh, okay. And then it's easy to judge Elle and be like, fucking grow up, like you're fine. But then I was like, no. if one of my parents was having an affair and then like I had to hang out with that person, I'd be like, I don't know if we can do that on this podcast, but put my middle fingers up.
Yeah, give the finger is what you just did. Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's cool, because I like that was actually something that we came up against often in development stages, and even shooting. And it was interesting. Like, there's actually like a lot of older human beings who like in their 20s, 30s, whatever, whose parents get divorced, and people don't talk about it. And it's the exact reason that I wanted to write that, because I'm like, we're expected to just be okay with it. And I think that sort of is part and parcel with just like quote unquote being an adult, where like you're supposed to just be okay with everything, and no, like shit knocks you sideways all the time. So that's cool. That resonated with you.
I also think it's that idea of like, there's certain things that you're not prepared for that really throw you for a loop. So even like it doesn't necessarily have to be divorce, but there's so many things that like as a society we're like, get over it and just like move on, continue your life. But sometimes it's like, no, I wasn't expecting to have this reaction to this thing, but it's fucking me up right now. So like I'm gonna need a second to process. And I think we can be really quick to judge, so I think it's good representation to have.
That's really cool. Thank you for that feedback. That's very cool.
Oh, wait. What? There's another part of that question, which was favorite characters.
Oh yeah.
The moms. I
The
can't
moms?
go with that.
Yes!
I gotta go with the moms, because so often we don't see people's families, or we just see them serving the plot point of the lead. And like, yes, there's those elements, but like to see the parents have their own lives and their own problems outside of their children
Yeah.
was fucking awesome. And Brenda and Meg were so good and so fun to watch in person, and then it came across on screen. Like, I don't know, I thought they were like badass women. I found them very magnetic and awesome, and really enjoyed watching their journeys as well.
That's so cool. I totally agree. Being able to create that representation of like vivacious older women was like extremely exciting for both Heidi and myself. So that was really, really cool. I'm glad that that resonated with you. That's really cool.
Yeah, and then like Molly's mom, when she comes out as bi, is like, well, we're open, so who gives a shit? I was like, that's such a good twist on it. And then I think also a good twist to then show like Molly's own, I don't even know what the right word would be, but the fact that she doesn't handle that well.
Right.
And she starts judging her parents when she was worried that they were going to judge her. And it kind of shows her as like a bit of a hypocrite in that moment. But I think that people are full of that, where it's like, I want my own acceptance. And then when someone else is a little bit different than ourselves, we still have a issue with that. And I think similar to the like lesbian bisexual conversation, it's like lesbians just want to be accepted and seen as valid. And then when someone's like, I'm bisexual, which is different than you, they're like, no, you're not, though. That doesn't exist. And
it's so interesting to have conversations with people that I'm like, but you want us to accept you, but you won't accept this other thing. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So very cool. Okay, I like that. That makes me really happy that resonated with you.
The moms.
In terms of, I mean, because whenever you're creating something, there's always a chance that you're going to fail. And often when we fail, that's where we get our biggest learning experiences from. Can you speak to things that you have like deeply failed at in your process of a filmmaker that like you feel sort of illuminated by, and then you were able to like go forward and have a success from that? Like a teachable moment, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a specific teachable moment, but as a filmmaker, if you're not prepared to fail at almost everything, then you're not going to make it. Because I feel like so many things that I've made, like two people see. So it's like, what is your definition of a failure? Is it how many people see it? Is it their reaction to it? Is it being a bit of a clusterfuck on set? Like, I think that there's so many different ways to measure failure in this, because technically like I said, most of the things I've done have been a failure because no one has watched them. But like, to me, they're not a failure because I learned something that then helped me go on to the next project, or I met someone who helped me make the next project. I love the process of making it. And so as long as that process is good and healthy, and like, I love things to be fun and collaborative. So to me, as long as the process was good and you learned something, it's not a failure.
Yeah.
But I'm also not often like putting up my own money that then could be lost if it's not a success or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think it should be about views, but I think other people look at it as views, but I don't give a shit about that. I don't know. I've learned a lot, honestly, from being a crew member on other people's sets. And I, for like 6 years, was a camera assistant on a lot of different projects.
Yeah.
And to me, that was the most helpful thing, and why I will still take the occasional camera assistant thing. I always have looked at camera assistant jobs as free film school, essentially.
Cool.
And so like getting to watch Sam direct and getting to watch Sam and Cam interact, you can like learn stuff from the way that other people are doing it, that then you can either go, oh, that's really helpful, I'm going to start doing that, or oh, that looks unhealthy, gonna avoid that. And even like, I learned the most about directing from being on set with Jordan Canning, who directed part of Schitt's Creek now, Emmy Award winning.
Yeah.
But I worked on an indie feature that she was the director of, and I saw directing in a way I had never seen it before. It was like kind and gentle, and she would just go up and like have private conversation with the actors for notes. Whereas before that, working with like mainly cis hetero white dudes, they would just like sit at the monitor and yell the directions at the actors, and I just saw a gentleness and an effectiveness that perhaps I hadn't seen before. This isn't the answer to your question at all, but is the thing that I found the most helpful and just being like, ooh, I'd never want to do it like that, and like, ooh, I do want to do it like that. I think subconsciously you just shift and like redirect and correct course for next time and be like, okay, learned a lesson on that. But I can't think of a specific like, Oof, learned not to do that.
So like you didn't sit behind a monitor and yell at your actors ever?
Oh, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
No.
Do you have a time where like you feel like you can't because sometimes when I'm out in the world just like experiencing things, I'm like, oh, this would make just like such a beautiful moment, or like I'm just always thinking of like how things can be filmed or how things can be shot. Like, do you feel like you don't get a break from that in your brain? Like, are you able to just like you and I just went on a huge road trip
Mm-hmm.
and
Across
like
Canada twice.
across Canada. And I mean, there were often times where I'm like, oh, like this would, or like my brain was just like going like, this could make such a cool XYZ, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a moment for you where your brain, do you feel like trapped in that, like where you're constantly thinking of shots or constantly thinking of story or like what you're seeing or hearing or experiencing that like you can't step outside of that?
I don't view it as trapped, only because I love that as a cinematographer and as a director, your job is to find beauty in your surroundings
Mm-hmm.
and to like look at a space and be like, what's the most beautiful, not always, but like what's the most beautiful representation of this space?
Mm-hmm.
And so I never feel trapped in the fact that I am constantly being like, oh, that would be a cool shot. Like on my way home just before this, I was grabbing groceries and the sun was setting and there's like beautiful light on a brick building. And I was like, oh, I just wish I had something other than my iPhone right now to
Right.
capture this, because this is beautiful. But I like it because I think it there's like a beauty and a romance in like trying to find those movie moments in everyday life, which I think is what you're alluding to as a writer and stuff. It's like, oh, even like if this happened next, it would be such a good scene. And so like, yeah, finding the like romantic version of everyday life is kind of cool.
Yeah. What for you makes a good TV show or film? What
Isn't
is
that the friggin' $1 billion question? Because
Yeah.
if anyone could actually figure that out, they would constantly be successful.
I mean, yeah, this is such a
I've got it. I've got the answer.
Okay.
I know. Characters.
characters.
And I think I say that because some of my favorite things go past so many genres. To me, yeah, the reason why like a Leslie Knope on Parks and Rec is so great is just it's her, and obviously that's credit to Amy Poehler, but
Yeah.
and then like Lovecraft Country that
Yeah.
I'm watching right now, that you're also watching right now, like it's not the genre that I would choose to watch consistently.
No.
But again, like to me, it's Ruby, the one lead sister, that like I'm just obsessed with her as a character, and also sort of queer, so that probably helps. But again, I'm just like magnetized to her whenever she's on screen.
Mhm.
And so I think that also comes down to good actors, and I think also why Avocado Toast is successful, because both you and Heidi are very magnetic on screen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very nice of you to
And
say.
the moms and everyone else.
And the moms.
Yeah.
What are you working on right now?
Great question.
Thank you.
No, I'm currently trying to develop a new web series, new queer web
Woo!
series. Yeah.
We want more Jay Stevens web series.
I'm trying to get them out there for you. But yeah, got a proof of concept for a new show that hopefully we can get some funding for and shoot in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
Working on Sloppy season 2 is what we like to call Slo Pitch.
Which I just learned from your podcast, the Slo Pitch podcast that you host.
Yeah.
Love these plugs, don't ya?
Yeah, well done. Wow.
That I didn't realize that you and Gwen like coined that on the spot. I thought that was really, really cool that was captured in live time audio.
Yeah, now we've been calling season 2 Sloppy Seconds, which
True.
I really, really like.
I love it. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
What are you working on right now, Perrie Voss?
What am I working on right now? I'm working on a ton of stuff. We just sent off a medium final draft to network with and for some funding applications for season 2 of Toasty, as you like to call it.
I like to, I don't know if anyone else is doing this, but I really like to call Avocado Toast Toasty.
I love it. Yeah, I think you're the only one that consistently calls it Toasty. We call our fans Toasties, which I think Scott Caballero might have coined.
It's a great term.
It's a great term, our Toasties.
I'm a Toasty for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Being a Toasty. But yeah, I think those are all the questions I have for you. Is there anything that you would like to say or sign off on or talk about before we depart?
Question two. I have two questions.
Oh, okay.
One, what was feedback on season 1? Or do you have one?
People seem to love it. Some people wanted longer episodes, which I was like, that's bananas, because they were longer than we had even anticipated making them. So thank you for wanting more. And lots of people just being like, that's my story. And I'm like, how is that possible? Because I didn't even know that that could be a thing. So that was really cool. And not just for my character, like for both characters. Like people were like, I came out as bisexual and then my parents got divorced. And I'm like, what?
You're both of us. What?
Yeah. You're an amalgamation of both. So yeah, so stuff like that. And I think just connecting people globally was just one of the coolest things that I've ever done.
Second question.
Okay.
What are you most proud of from Avocado Toast season 1?
I think doing the thing, which I like had so many ideas my whole life. And I was like, I want to make something. And I did it.
No, but that's huge. And I think also, like you said about having different ideas and not doing it can also be so easy to like try once, it not work. You'd be like, okay, this isn't the right idea, or screw this, I'll just work on other people's stuff. This is too hard. But I give so much credit to you and Heidi and Charlie once you brought him on in terms of like not getting the funding the first year and then being like, okay, how do we make this better? How do we make this stronger? And then not giving up. Because that honestly, when people ask me like, how did you make Slo Pitch? It's just like, you can't fucking give up when people say no, because so many people are going to say no to you and your idea. So I think it's amazing that you did the thing.
Thank you. And I will say, like, when times were tough and we were getting a lot of no's, there was a lot of tears and a lot of like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
And like feeling like we were living in a vacuum of like our story and like nobody wanted to see this, and like how do we make it viable that people will want to see it?
You went 0 to 4,000.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, let me make this little short film as like a feeler. It was like, let's make a badass, huge scale web series.
Way bigger than we ever set out to make, ever. Yeah. So that was.
But it's a testament to the story and how people do relate to it.
Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome, Perrie.
That's really sweet. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the thing I'm the most proud of. I mean, I'm proud of a lot of things, but that's, yeah, the fact that it came out of our brains and now it's in the world.
No, it's amazing though.
What are you most excited about coming up for you creatively or otherwise?
I recently got like re-inspired about a feature idea that I have that I would potentially write, which I don't normally do. So I'm simultaneously the most scared and the most excited about actually doing that, and not just like putting it off and not trying to hire someone else to do it. And just like, I have a story that I think is an important one to be told, and I want to do that.
I agree. I like,
but also terrified.
But this is how we do the things. Also, I should say you were one of the most let's just do it person I've ever met in my life, and I'm constantly inspired by that.
I will take that one, because everyone makes all the excuses as to why making film is hard, and by no means am I saying it's not hard, because it's tough, but it's always easy to say why you can't do something. And I'm more so like, but actually what's stopping you right now? Pause and think about it. I have a camera. What's stopping you? So I feel very passionate about just fucking do it.
I completely agree. And
it might suck, and that's fine, but you probably learned something and no one needs to see it.
Yeah. And I've had people be like, how do you make a web series? I'm like, you just do it. It's the worst advice and the best advice that I ever got from people. So I agree. Yeah. You are a constant inspiration, because you just, you're one of the only people that I'm like, if you say you're going to do something, I'm like, look out, because in a year it's going to be or less time. If it's, I'm talking specifically about your feature, but
yeah,
if it's less time,
thank you.
You're welcome. What can't you do?
Feel passionate. Oh, lots of things.
Yeah, no, it's great. So yeah, you are one to watch, and look out, world.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, thank you. And thank you for being a part of our show.
My absolute pleasure for all of the things. Thank you. Thank you for creating content that's important for the world to see.
Thank you so much for listening.
And thank you to Ontario Creates for the support to make Avocado Toast the Series podcast possible. You can pick your player to watch all 10 episodes of Avocado Toast the Series at www.avocadotoasttheseries.com.
We'd also love to give a huge shout out to Russell Lauder for the use of their beautiful song, Cost of Living. You can find more of their music sprinkled throughout the episodes of our web series, as well as on Spotify, Bandcamp, and iTunes, and links to their social media is in our show notes.